Hi, today Amy and I will be discussing some key events relating to LGBTQ+ civil rights. Although the LGBTQ+ community is currently still striving to acquire their full civil rights in the United States, it has come a long way. If you didn't know, the abbreviation stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer. When you hear about LGBTQ protests, you probably think of images like this, and this. However, at some point in time, it once looked like this, and this too. This has been an ongoing fight since the mid-1900s, and there is still much progress to be made because discrimination has been around for a while now. Today, the LGBTQ Center promotes equality and builds community. LGBTQ activists and socialists see this community building as an counterweight to heterosexism, homophobia, biphobia, transphobia, sexualism, conformist pressures that exist in the larger society. Throughout the years, there have been numerous significant events which led to drastic changes in this community. One of our very first situations took place on December 15th of 1950. Beginning in the late 1940s and continuing through the 1960s, thousands of gay employees were fired or forced to resign from their federal workforce because of their sexuality. The purging will be known as the Lavender Scare. This wave of repression was also bound up with anti-communism. This purge followed an era in which gay people were increasingly finding each other and forming communities in urban America. During World War II, many men and women left behind their restrictions of rural life for the first time. After the war, young people poured into cities where density made pursuit of the same-sex relationships more possible than ever. By the late 1940s, even the general public was becoming more aware of homosexuality. However, society did not make homosexuality more acceptable. On this day, a Senate report titled, quote-unquote, Employment of Homosexuals and Other Sex Perverts in Government was distributed to members of Congress after the federal government had investigated employees' sexual orientation at the beginning of the Cold War. The report states since homosexuality is a mental illness, homosexuals, quote-unquote, constitute security risks to the nation because those who engage in overt acts of perversion lack the emotional stability of normal persons. Just 3 years after, on April 27 of 1953, President Dwight Eisenhower signs Executive Order 10450 banning homosexuals from working for the federal government or any of its private contractors. The order lists homosexuals as security risks along with alcoholics and neurotics. He also urged our allies overseas to conduct similar purges to their countries. The rationale was that homosexuals were a threat to the security of the country because their immoral lifestyle left them as susceptible to blackmail by foreign agents who had presumably induced them to reveal sensitive government information in exchange for avoiding exposure. The One Inc. versus Alston case was one of the very first Supreme Court cases to consider LGBTQ rights concerning freedom of speech. On January 13th of 1958, the United States Supreme Court ruled in favor of the First Amendment rights of the lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender magazine called One, the homosexual magazine. The magazine, which is considered by One Archives Foundation to be America's first widely distributed magazine for gay readers, included articles, editorials, short stories, and other content. Not long after publication began, its August and October editions were seized by the Los Angeles postal authorities. Authorities argued that the publication violated obscenity laws. However, in its decision, the Supreme Court tossed out a lower court's ruling and established that the material aimed at a gay audience was not inherently obscene. The decision validated that the people had the right to publish LGBTQ media. The start of year 1962 was significant for the community because this was the very first day when Illinois repeals its sodomy laws, becoming the first U.S. state to decriminalize homosexuality. It did so when it adopted an overall revision of its criminal laws. Connecticut followed Illinois' lead in 1971, and 19 more states repealed their sodomy laws in the 1970s. Officers from the New York Police Department arrived, and they justified the raid with a search warrant authorizing them to investigate the illegal sale of alcohol at Stonewall. Led by Deputy Inspector Seymour Pine, the police entered the establishment and began to interrogate the patrons. The raid was routine for a bar like Stonewall, but this time events did not unfold according to inspectors' plan.
The Baker v. Nelson Supreme Court case in 1972 first faced the issue of marriage equality in the United States. A same-sex couple went to apply for a marriage license and were denied their request, which caused turmoil between the Supreme Court and LGBTQ people. However, the LGBTQ community had a big win when the Democratic Rules Committee stated that it would not discriminate against homosexuals. In 1986, the Supreme Court case Bowers v. Hardwick dealt with a Georgia sodomy law stating that gay adults couldn't engage in private consensual sodomy. The LGBTQ community reached a peak when in the Supreme Court case Romer v. Evans, it was decided that laws couldn't single out LGBTQ people to take away their rights. Finally, in 2015, the LGBTQ community reached its biggest win, marriage. It was argued that state officials were violating the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause by prohibiting same-sex couples from marrying or not acknowledging marriages in other states. In a 5-4 ruling, the Supreme Court decided that the fundamental right to marry to someone was guaranteed for everyone. In current events, there has been a lot of anti-discrimination acts and laws to ensure that people could freely state their sexual orientation and gender identity without being judged or harassed. Thank you for listening to our presentation.